So, Rui, thank you so much for joining me. We're delving into the world of quote to cash and CPQ and your expertise today. So, we'll go through all of that. But first and foremost, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, we'll delve into all the exciting stuff, looking around the Salesforce products and your journey. But I do really like to start with right back at the beginning and kind of work out how you got to this point. So what did you want to do in your early career? What were your kind of aspirations, and what did you end up doing when you first started in the workforce?
Oh yeah, it's quite a long time back. So yeah, I think I always had the kind of idea in terms of from an IT related career. Like I think so I just did kind of information engineering at university, and I think always the kind of business analyst was always like the first objective in terms of from a role point of view. And yeah, of course, like at that time, everyone was just dreaming of becoming a project manager or something like that. So I think it was just aligned to to that mindset as well. So yeah.
Okay, and then when you got kind of started in the IT world, were you initially ABA? Was that kind of the first path you took?
Yeah, I think kind of a lot of hands-on kind of work as well. So it's kind of quite junior at that time, and but I was quite lucky. Like in the beginning, I didn't end up actually working with like any programming language in itself. So at that time, kind of what did it called? Kind of case tools were quite in the hype at the time. So basically, like kind of a tool where you basically do configuration and you not do actually kind of any coding of any sort. And kind of the tools were having like an engine to generate that on the background, and just to be able to kind of implement applications around that.
Isn't that what Salesforce is selling the platform as these days?
Yeah, quite similar. Was still it was at the time was like kind of a client server type of approach. So yeah, it's quite old days, but yeah, already I think with some concepts that applicable to a lot of them these days. So yeah.
Sure. So and I'm sure you are big around exploring new challenges and bringing people into the ecosystem, because I know full well that in New Zealand you don't have enough people over there for the volume of jobs you have, and it's the same here in Australia. And you're someone that has travelled a lot with your career. So you're from Portugal. You've worked in I believe London, Dubai first, then London, and now New Zealand. So how have you benefited from doing that, like going to different cultures and different cities and experiencing kind of different ways of working?
Yeah, it's been quite a rewarding kind of path, I would say. So yeah, I've worked and I lived and worked in Portugal since until 2010, which kind of then like the opportunity of going kind of abroad came up. And yeah, I've spent 5 days in Dubai first, which was quite a shift, because it's a major cultural shift from a European mindset to a Middle Eastern mindset, but at the same time quite kind of rewarding, because you end up kind of working with a lot of different people, different cultures, and like Dubai is an expat city, right? So you end up like working with like either kind of other Westerners as well as like local people, people from kind of different sides of the globe. Yeah, so quite rewarding, but yeah, quite also a challenge, because yeah, it was quite a change in terms of ways of working, etc. But it serves to experience a lot. And then like back in London, which again, it's also like London is a city of kind of a multicultural city, so you end up I was basically coming back to kind of the Western world, but still engaging with kind of and still being able to work with people from various places in a very kind of dynamic kind of ecosystem from a professional world perspective. So yeah, and now here in New Zealand, so it has been quite an awesome experience, and I think from professionally, but also kind of personally, I think even from a kind of a family perspective, and I have like two daughters that have been able to experience all these differences over their kind of childhood. And, I think it's been quite rewarding.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, we'll get on to New Zealand towards the end because I'm keen to hear what you most enjoy about working and living there.
Mm-hmm.
But to touch on now in the world of CPQ, and we had a kind of two-way conversation on LinkedIn because I'd put a post up around CPQ, and I'd mentioned someone had referred to it as, well, obviously it's configure price quote, but someone else had referred to it as causes people to quit, and I think that got a bit of engagement on LinkedIn. So I wanted to delve into this world and pick your brains because you really have been a specialist in this field for a number of years now, and obviously you've worked in London, and you've worked in product companies and consulting, and you've got quite a unique view on the world of CPQ. So what was it that first attracted you into being a CPQ specialist?
Yeah, I think like CPQ has been around for quite a while now. I think now it's just being called CPQ kind of recently, but even so, like my background has always has been all around kind of CRM, so customer relationship management. So before Salesforce, I worked a lot within Siebel CRM. And at the time, there was already kind of similar type of capabilities. It was not branded as like or called as CPQ, but there was already like things like product configuration and pricing, logic, etc. So yeah, it's something that's been kind of been around for a while. I've always kind of had a lot of experience around that because it's always part of any, if you're implementing kind of any CRM tool from a sales process point of view, you end up having to deal with this with the domain around CPQ, because yeah, it's all about kind of that kind of sales process and kind of product catalogs and pricing and quoting and discounting, etc. So yeah, it's been always an area that kind of had a lot of kind of attention from my end, and I always enjoyed a lot. So yeah, I think it was just a natural progression when that opportunity came in terms of joining Steelbrick at the time, when I was in London. So yeah, it's been quite a since then it's been quite an interesting ride, and it's quite interesting to see also how kind of CPQ has evolved from a Salesforce ecosystem perspective. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and in that sense, like, has that was that like a strategic move when you kind of saw the opportunity come up with Steelbrick, that you knew that the this market was going to be kind of people short, and also there was going to be lots of opportunity, or has it just kind of evolved into that?
No, it's just evolved into that. So from a Salesforce ecosystem point of view, it was definitely like something that everyone was basically talking about at the time, and like the opportunity came up, and yeah, I didn't even think twice. So I just kind of jumped on that. It was quite an interesting experience, and right at the time, because so Steelbrick at the time was already quite well, quite big in the US, but it was still kind of doing its first steps and starting to expand from a Europe point of view. So yeah, it was kind of joining at the right time within Europe, which kind of presented a lot of interesting kind of challenges and engagements, etc. So yeah.
Nice. So what does make a CPQ project complex? Like, what are the considerations and things that people need to be aware of? And when you're starting a new CPQ project, what do you typically look to do just to kind of, as best you can, ensure success?
Yeah, I think CPQ is quite interesting because it's a bit different from the normal any kind of typical Salesforce engagement. I think it's because of the nature of the product as well, in terms of how kind of the configuration of the actual product is all about. Because it's mainly it's all like data driven, a data driven configuration, opposed to the normal like metadata type of configuration that Salesforce typically leverages. So because you're kind of playing with data, it's very pretty much around a lot of accuracy and just making sure kind of because anything could kind of impact the end result. So when thinking about implementing something like CPQ, you definitely need to be kind of ensuring that either from like a project team perspective, you're kind of ready, but that you're ready either for like with if you're the kind of the partner implementing it, but from the customer side, there's also a lot of readiness that is required to ensure. And like otherwise you'll just end up on almost like an ongoing kind of implement and refine, and you never kind of end up reaching anywhere. So like requirements need to be properly in place. There's a lot of work that needs to be done from, for example, like a commercial kind of offering point of view, in terms of like your whole the customer commercial offering, in terms of like the how the products should be structured, how the pricing will need to be kind of configured. So because all of that will be like your like the baseline for the whole functionality. So getting that first step right first time is quite critical. So you just need to ensure, either from an implementation partner point of view, as well as from the customer side, that everything is just in place in order to allow for that first step to be successful. So you kind of need to either have all the information in place and all kind of the requirements in place, but all the right people as well, because you also want to leverage the most as possible the standard capabilities of the product, and this independent of whatever CPQ you're using, either Salesforce CPQ or something else. That you want to kind of the implementation to be as much configuration driven, instead of having to go to kind of a custom approach, so that you want definitely to avoid, just to allow that kind of flexibility and scalability of the solution. So yeah, I think it's quite a lot of a very good discovery is definitely one of the key things I always try to have in terms of any engagement, so that you can prepare as much as possible to that first phase, which is definitely the critical from any engagement perspective.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess the answer to this will probably be that it varies. But when you are implementing Salesforce CPQ, are customers typically using another CPQ product first, and they're moving away from that, or do they, are they sometimes not that sophisticated and they've got,
That's an interesting one, because I think you will be surprised by the number of customers that are still managing all of that from spreadsheets. And it's not like small customers, it's like big customers. They're still driving all those processes from spreadsheets and not from an actual system. So I think the majority of the cases we end up finding is from customers who still have a very manual approach, or have like a wonderful spreadsheet with these brilliant macros in place that drive all of that logic. That you end up wanting to kind of replace with something more configuration driven and not that custom. But then I think the remaining would be like either customers which are on some other CPQ tool that they are not happy with, or a lot of them will still have like custom built solutions in some platform that are just driving that capability.
You must see some real resistance from when you go into a customer and someone that has built that Excel spreadsheet, and they're the only one that knows how to fix the macros, and all of a sudden you're offering to move across to this shiny new platform. They've been building their role around that Excel spreadsheet for so long.
I think a lot of them just feel a sense of relief as well, because it's just they don't want to be the kind of the bottleneck for all of that constantly. Right, so as you say, usually those spreadsheets have come up with like by someone's initiative to build that, just to help, and that becomes the rule from a company point of view. But then they get like the single point of contact for that. So yeah, I think there's always like there's different cases, but and a lot of the times it's quite that sense of relief. Because they finally they have something that can kind of replace what they've been kind of having to support and manage across the business. So
sure.
Form building can be a tedious and complex process when collecting loads of data for enterprises. Solve this issue with ease through Form Assembly, an all-in-one secure web form builder with a robust Salesforce integration. This seamless web-to-lead form building connection boasts features including sophisticated data collection, the option to pre-fill forms, create and update records, and more. Their advanced compliance standards offer prime solutions for companies in the government, FinServe, healthcare, non-profit, and higher education spaces. Visit www.formassembly.com/talent hub to find out why Form Assembly is the #1 enterprise form building platform for Salesforce and how it can be customized to fit the needs of your company.
Sure. So another question, I guess there's going to be lots of variations too, but it will depend on what you're implementing. But on a typical project, like for your CPQ team, what is that made up of? Because I guess in the broader ecosystem, we have like functional and technical, and you'll have a developer and a functional consultant, and is that the same on a typical CPQ project? Even though I know you do want to kind of keep it as much out of the box as possible.
Yeah, definitely the functional needs to be there, because it's the core of the work with CPQ. It's a functional configuration. It's not that much technical. Of course, then depending on like what are we trying to implement, or kind of business requirements, etc. Sometimes you kind of need to have someone technical to come in and complement whatever will be necessary. But yeah, I think the core definitely is kind of a functional profile, and with kind of quite strong Salesforce knowledge as well, not only on CPQ but across the board, and especially around Sales Cloud, and then being complemented by kind of a more technical profile if required, and of course then it all depends on things like if you'll have integration with any other systems or things like that you can you may need to bring someone else with some other different type of skill set in order to complement that. But from a core CPQ implementation perspective, yeah, definitely like the functional profiles and kind of will be the core for that kind of that hands-on type of role. Of course, like you'll like to complement that as much as possible with someone kind of that will be able to kind of understand in the whole kind of end-to-end solution, so more from a solution architecture point of view. But yeah, that will be the case.
So we've seen recently like a slight increase in CPQ billing roles in Australia, but we haven't seen as many companies implementing billing as like just core CPQ. That there haven't been, like, it hasn't always been CPQ and billing. It seemed to be a bit of a bolt-on that not everyone seems to go with. But would a traditional CPQ consultant, should they be able to do billing work as well? Is it quite straightforward to pick up, or is there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So initially, Salesforce billing also came came through the Stillbrick acquisition, and I think early days, Salesforce billing was you needed to have CPQ to have Salesforce billing in place as well, and kind of only recently they have been able to decouple that, and now you kind of have you can use Salesforce billing from a multi-cloud point of view. So you don't need to have CPQ. You could have any other kind of way of, as long as you can generate orders within Salesforce, you'll be able to build them through Salesforce billing. So that from a historic point of view, it has always been that very kind of tight alignment between CPQ and billing. And again, I think depends on, because the use case for CPQ is much more often than the use case for billing. And I think the main use case for billing that comes up is like either if you actually need to kind of a solution to handle billing and you don't have anything, or and most of the times is like customers already having some finance platform where they currently do their billing, but then because they are going into a more kind of recurring revenue type of approach, etc., and they kind of switch gears in terms of subscription billing, subscription models, which kind of require kind of very kind of specific capabilities around subscription billing, and some of those legacy finance platforms don't have that. So kind of almost like Salesforce billing comes to kind of bridge that gap and to be able to address those specific use cases. So that's I think that's the reason why you kind of see much more look in terms of kind of CPQ profile than billing profiles. But yeah, not every, because with while with CPQ is pretty much a conversation around your kind of end-to-end sales process. When it comes to billing, it's already kind of that bridge between sales and finance, right? So, which is awesome because bringing all of that, for example, within Salesforce, it kind of brings everyone to the same kind of platform. You end up almost like breaking, because many times like salespeople and finance people just work in kind of silos, and they typically work in different different platforms as well. And kind of bringing billing into your kind of CRM kind of breaks a bit in terms of that separation, which kind of drives a lot of efficiencies and gains from a business point of view. But it's a different type of capability and different type of expertise, because it already starts falling into kind of the finance side of it, which you basically need a bit more experience on that side. But yeah, I think from a historic point of view, typically see whoever is delivering billing also kind of delivers CPQ. But there's quite a bit of gap there to accommodate in order to for a good CPQ person to become also a good billing person.
Yeah, interesting. And obviously, you mentioned you worked for Stillbrick before the Salesforce acquisition, so I guess you have quite a unique view on the product and how it has evolved since the acquisition. So, how do you see, like, where have Salesforce developed the tool, and where does it kind of position now compared to other CPQ tools and products in the market with some of the other big players?
Yeah, it definitely evolved, of course. So. Kind of Salesforce brought another level of focus on the tools, and kind of brought them to become more aligned to the overall kind of platform capabilities. And I think one of the things that you've seen is that there's been a lot of kind of barriers that have been or kind of limits that have been removed out of that, just by in terms of optimizing the way that the platform was built. but it just kept. I think with Stillbrick, definitely things were always kind of evolving at a very fast pace, and with the acquisition, they kind of continued. So I think from a product capability point of view, it kind of kept the growth from a capability standpoint, but I think it just brought that kind of stability around platform because it started to become Salesforce itself. So they kind of brought that to another level in terms of kind of scalability and performance, etc. Which I think from a historic point of view, there was a bit of that view that before kind of Salesforce acquisition, there was a lot of that view that kind of Stillbrick was not meant for kind of enterprise grade customers. So kind of other options will be there. But I think that's nowadays like kind of Salesforce CPQ, Salesforce billing, you can kind of apply that either to kind of a small customer or kind of an enterprise grade customer, as long as the use cases kind of make sense. The platform is there and can cover them.
Sure, and we've touched on obviously CPQ has been the kind of main theme throughout the conversation. But your title is actually you lead the quote to cash practice within Devanti. So what else comes under quote to cash?
I think it's all that, like if we bring billing into the loop, it's all that kind of sales finance kind of process, that end-to-end thing from like identification of a possible deal until you get actually kind of you collect the revenue out of that. So that's that whole end-to-end process that covers that quote to cash kind of process. I think beyond kind of the revenue cloud platforms, there's a lot of stuff that complement that, like for example, like document generation capabilities, like with the likes of kind of DocuSign and Conga, or I don't know, kind of more elaborate kind of contract lifecycle management capabilities. So all of that still falls within the quote to cash space. So like it's just a kind of a question to leverage additional capabilities that are there from an app exchange point of view, that can kind of enhance and complement the capabilities already there from a revenue cloud point of view. And then there's things like, for example, like B2B commerce, where you already have like connectors to CPQ in order for you to be able to kind of capture those quotes and orders from a commerce perspective. So yeah, I think all falls into that kind of sales and kind of finance space, but pretty much focused on the kind of the customer engagement perspective, not from because even with billing in place, you still need to have, like, typically the customers will still need to have like an actual finance platform to handle things like accounting and general ledgers and all of that. But all that with something like Revenue Cloud, you'll be able to kind of encompass everything from a customer engagement point of view, from the start of the engagement with identification of a potential lead into the actual kind of nurture of that relationship and kind of keep basically managing to keep the customer happy in terms of the relation with that specific customer that leverages Revenue Cloud for it.
You would see customers potentially have like Financial Force and billing.
Using both, I think, depends on what you're implementing Financial Force for, because I know that kind of Financial Force also has some billing capabilities, where like you typically see them competing in some instances.
Okay.
But yeah, if it's something like more like a kind of managing the Financial Force as an area in terms of managing actual kind of projects, so it's more like a workforce management type of thing, and you'll be able to manage that type of process. That could be a complement to the to what kind of or billing can cover. And but yeah, I think they still compete a bit there from a billing capability itself.
Sure. Now, we all know the Salesforce market is short of quality and experienced resources, and I think no area more so than CPQ right now. So, when you're looking for talent, and are there creative ways that you can kind of expand your pool? So, have you found there are backgrounds that people transition well from into CPQ, or skill sets that you've seen people kind of be able to pick up CPQ quickly?
Yeah. So I think if you have already kind of a solid kind of Salesforce functional background, and kind of quite experienced on the sales cloud side, you're definitely a good candidate for that. Of course, kind of CPQ requires a bit of a change in the way that things are kind of implemented and how you handle that. But if we want to explore something kind of outside of the Salesforce ecosystem, I think like resources that have been working on kind of with other platforms around the same kind of context in terms of like product catalogs and product configuration, pricing, etc. Just like the example I was making before around the Siebel side. Like there's a lot of ex-Siebel people that come into the Salesforce world that have kind of become quite successful from a CPQ perspective as well, because they have that, like if they have that background from a kind of product configuration, pricing, etc. I think all those concepts are kind of still valid when thinking about CPQ. So yeah, it's not it's not an easy to find kind of good resources around that, definitely. But yeah,
they do exist, or there are transitions that can be made, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've been living in New Zealand now for a few years, and I know you would love more CPQ people in New Zealand, I'm sure. So what do you most enjoy about New Zealand compared to where you've been before?
I think, like, of course, kind of people in the country itself. I think I always felt very kind of very welcomed here by kind of everyone. And it's a very kind of welcoming country, I would say. Also, I think even now, like especially now seeing what kind of happens with what has happened with COVID, definitely in the right place of the world at the time. But yeah, I think it's definitely like a country where you can kind of meet kind of a good sense of either from a professional work as well as a kind of a personal work. So a very good kind of balance between the two, and kind of very high quality standards around all of that. So yeah, I definitely kind of would recommend to anyone. But yeah, we've been definitely enjoying it, and yeah.
Yeah, well,
kind of ourselves as Kiwis already. But yeah.
Yeah, nice. Well, hopefully people will be listening to this and they want to come over, because I know, like Australia, we need more good people. So look, if anyone wants to reach out and pick your brains on anything, quote to cash or anything that you've discussed today, where's the best place to find you?
Just I think the easiest will always be LinkedIn, right? And I'm kind of happy to everyone kind of reach out and kind of if not already a connection, just kind of add me as a connection and just ping me through kind of direct message. I'm happy to kind of revert back. So yeah, happy to kind of share a bit of kind of experience and even if it's just anything I could help on, I'm quite happy to do that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience in this space. And yeah, hopefully we'll see more and more talent coming into the CPQ world and see how the space evolves. So thank you very much.
Fingers crossed, because I think there's still plenty to be done around this region. So yeah, it's quite an exciting area to focus on. So yeah,
definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you and all the best.
Awesome. Thank you.